Welcome to the Cisco show. I'm done. I'm going to start again. Thank you. Count me down. Restart the teleprompter. Can't call myself Don.
Okay, ready? Stand by. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Hank Cisco Show. I'm John Doyle. I'm here filling in for Hank this week. Hank's still in the hospital, getting through some recovery and rehabilitation. We hope him a great recovery period, and we're thinking about him all the time, and we hope that you folks will keep him in your thoughts as well. But today we have a special guest, a guest who Hank's had on before. We're going to sort of try and catch up and find out how things are going, get some information. It'll be potentially a less dynamic interview than last time from my end, but I know our guest is full of life and energy. So let's meet and talk to Mark Barbee, who is the mayor of Bridgeport. Mark, thank you so much for being here. It's really great to have you.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be back.
It's been more than a year, I think, since we talked, somewhere in that vicinity. Can you tell us a little bit about how this, the beginning of your experience as mayor has been?
Well, it's like, no. No, but seriously, it's in a general sense, I feel like there's been a lot of progress. In the beginning, there certainly was. I mean, things are still great, but I felt like we got off to a super great start with getting the anti-discrimination ordinance in. That was something I proposed that council did end up supporting in a 4-3. And just with a lot of community development and stuff like that, the borough administration was able to coordinate the Twilight on the River, which was a super success over there in Bridgeport. A lot of support from a lot of other municipalities. So we're on our way.
That's great. And your transition from councilman to mayor went smoothly then, I guess.
Initially, yeah, it was seemingly very smooth in the beginning. I think after the proposal of the anti-discrimination ordinance, I think that was probably where I started to notice a bit of a change in that regard. But in a general sense, it was absolutely great in the beginning. I mean, the Inquirer actually had initially put out an article about the revitalization in Bridgeport and the new direction that we were going in, and the positivity. So we got off to a great start.
It's good. I know that you suffered some challenges, and we're going to sort of move away from the Bridgeport story to sort of your story in Bridgeport to find out sort of what happened and where things are. And I know that you experienced some measure of challenge harassment. We can go that far to say that from community. Is that where it came from? How did that happen? Like, what was the experience that was happening with you at that time?
I would definitely. I mean, it was absolutely at the very least a community. I would definitely say certain council members as well, sadly. But where I think a lot of the events kind of reached a head were after the anti-discrimination ordinance. That's where I started to watch certain coalitions developed. And I think how it appeared was as though the anti-discrimination ordinance was something that I wanted for myself. Being an openly gay black man, I think that it was just easy for people to see it that way. And the kind of narrative at that time was that I was imposing my personal beliefs on people, which isn't at all the truth. But I think that's kind of where a group of people, it wasn't at all the majority. It wasn't at all the majority at that time. But that's kind of where it started to develop. And then after the then chief resigned, I think that's where I really watched certain, things turn in a very dark direction following that.
Yeah, and so I guess the idea of an anti-discrimination certainly comes from experiences you may have had. I mean, you have two different parts of your life that people do actively discriminate against, right?
Right. I mean, that's real. I know just in my own experience that we absolutely needed it, and I think that a lot of the events have also demonstrated that we needed it, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like that's why it's there. That's why I proposed it. But it's not a personal thing. You know what I mean? Like
right.
I don't gain I don't gain from it. You know, but other people do. You know, it sets the tone that at least what it's meant to do is I felt like it set the tone that we don't tolerate and we don't accept that sort of behavior and that sort of, discrimination and that sort of narrative in this town. And I remember the long meetings that we had when it was a huge issue, and I remember so many people from the public getting on the mic and saying, well, we don't need it. Like, what makes you think we need it? And I think it's quite clear, and if they haven't seen it for themselves, that we do need it. We really need much more than that, and that's okay. We all do, you know what I mean? It's a learning process for everybody.
Yeah, when you passed that ordinance, the LGBTQ community in the region, their applause went up, right, as that passed. There was articles I read and support I know came from all sorts of organizations around the area, because people know that we need some kind of structure to protect ourselves, and especially in a community that's growing with diversity like Bridgeport is. We want to make sure that people can feel welcome and safe and all of those kinds of things.
Right. There's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with having that. But, I think that was where I think certain people, I don't think everyone saw that message. I know everybody didn't see that message. And that was kind of where it took a turn. And then when the chief, and it was, as you may or may not be familiar with, we've been through several chiefs in Bridgeport as well.
Right.
And I think when he resigned and read at the meeting that it was, involving, relations between myself, that was part, that was reason in part, that was where, that was absolutely, that was undoubtedly the turning point for the negative narrative at that time.
And so talk to me about what the negative narrative towards you became. What was happening towards you during that time and since then? I mean, I know it's not necessarily stopped.
Yeah, the overt harassment has stopped. The threats, you know what I mean, the crowds at meetings, all of that has stopped. So that's been the silver lining behind all of this stuff blowing up, is that much has stopped. There's what's been left behind has been tough, you know what I mean, because it seems like what happened was after all of that hit the news and everything, I'm not going to say the town as though it's everybody, but what I perceive when I go out is what I get from people is what I hear it every time I go anywhere. Those articles really hurt this town. And my response is always, and who do you hold accountable for that? Right. I didn't do anything. And it's sad that people just kind of decide. At least that's how it seems. You know what I mean? It feels like there's a lot of support for me in everywhere but the town. And I haven't quite figured out how to handle or how to respond to that just yet. I've been trying to, because, we got to move forward. You know what I mean? We got to move past it. Things have to do better, but I haven't figured out how to, how to enhance that message. I don't want it to seem as though that's the only thing I'm fighting for. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot to do. There's a lot on the to-do list for Bridgeport. There really is, and this. This was something that I didn't count on this. You know what I mean? I didn't run with the expectation that this was going to happen this way.
Right.
But I don't feel like we're done. I do know we need more work, but there's just other things that have to be done as well. So I'm still going back and forth about how to proceed in the right direction in that regard. Because what I've noticed is it's not so much about turning non-believers into believers, because a lot of it is just prejudice, race. Some of it's just the way people are raised. You're not going to change everybody, and I don't think that's the problem. What the problem was this went on unchallenged. What I feel when I'm out is it's taboo to support me, and that's what I think is sad, and the problem is people don't feel comfortable or people don't feel confident, even though they know. I get the Facebook messages that I get from residents give me the impression that they're supportive and that there's support there. I don't question the support when I'm reading private messages. But it's not the same when I'm out. I don't hear it the same. You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel that way when I'm in town. And I want to get that back, you know, and I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. And it's hard because I was on council for 4 years before that. I volunteered for everything in town, you know what I mean? And I don't know what else. I haven't figured out what else I can do.
And it's certainly, so there's no surprise of who you are or the kind of person you were, even to some great extent your politics, because you've been on council, so
right, they
people
know
had a
me.
sense of who you were.
The people do know me.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting, people are often emboldened in their private messages because of the measure of safety, and personal care and publicly is such a different challenge. And Bridgeport is an interesting town. I mean, it is a town that has a rich history, right? And certainly has, it's sandwiched between these other areas, which I hope we'll talk about before we're done, and has a really interesting community foundation and certainly a strong religious foundation. And, you know, people struggle with what their public persona may be seen as. You know, it's always funny to me when I hear someone saying that the subject of the newspaper article is the target of the problem. And it's disappointing to hear that, but, you know, press, to be honest, there's some really good press that has come out about this particular item. You know, like I have read articles that have talked about the value of Bridgeport deciding to elect an openly gay and black mayor. And so those parts of the story are there. It's just hard for people to see past that. For you, moving back towards the business of Bridgeport is about you making a decision that steps above the challenges of what's happening. How is that process going for you with the council? Do you feel like you can move your way into a place where the business of Bridgeport is going to become the forefront again?
That's where I'm still unsure.
Right.
I'm still unsure. I don't know that the relationship with council is where I would like it to be or where it's ever been. But and I know I would like to move. I would like to take steps to move forward in that regard for the town's sake. I think where there's room for improvement is there could just be more inclusion in that regard. I feel like following the articles, not even exclusive to council, but there's just been, there's just not a lot of, I'm honestly just not invited to a lot of stuff anymore. It just seems like I'm just kind of boxed out of a lot of what's going on in town, which to me says that I have to come up with my own initiatives, which is fine, and which is really what I should be doing anyway. And I genuinely believe that. But it makes it challenging, you know what I mean? It does.
What would you like to see? Like, what's the next moves for Bridgeport in your mind? Like, what do you think? So you know,
a beautiful waterfront development.
Yeah, great. That sounds great, right? You're already developing 4th Street, am I right?
Yeah, it's definitely. We have more businesses coming in.
Can you talk to me about some of what's happening down there on 4th Street?
We have a rock climbing gym coming in.
Really?
It's going to be super, super cool. Yeah, we're very excited about that.
That's great. And you have the tap houses down there, am I right?
Tap houses down there. We got Bridgeport Brew Pub, Bridgeport Rib House, which is classic, of course. They've always been there.
Right.
I don't know, you know, they're like the pivot Franzones. You know, we got Nona Rosas. It's really, Bridgeport is, it really is beautiful. It really is coming together, you know what I mean? It's some growing pains, but we're doing it. We're making it.
You know, when I make the drive down through 4th Street to sort of head my way potentially to a better route to the expressway when I'm heading to the city, I continually notice new places like new restaurant or a new cafe or whatever on that street. How do you feel that development's going to help the town? Like, what's the value of all those new businesses for you?
It's imperative. You know, what I feel like we want to create, and this is, I think, still a little bit of the tug of war in Bridgeport. Yeah. We're leaning towards a more progressive Bridgeport, but it's still a little bit of a tug of war between whether or not we want to establish the downtown district, because that's what, you know what I mean? That's what we want to revitalize. Like, that's kind of what we want and have to do. And I think there's still maybe a faction of town that is like, you know, we're not really looking for that. You know, we just kind of want to, we just want to be able to do our own thing and be our own and be our own like entity, and not that we're not, and that's always the struggle between like, maintaining the community and revitalizing at once. But we're definitely taking the steps towards, revitalization and establishing that like vibrant downtown district. So I'm pleased to see we're on our way.
Yeah, it certainly feels walkable too. It's one of the things I think that Norristown struggles with is the walkability of their downtown. And it sure feels like the Bridgeport downtown is walkable, plenty of parking, all of that.
I don't know about the plenty of parking. I mean, we're all right.
There's some, yeah, you're doing okay. So tell me a little bit about what you would see as a waterfront. What's that look like?
It would be a lot of different houses, a lot
Okay.
of different townhouses, and a sprinkle of businesses. A little bit of a retail, commercial, residential mix over there. But we'll see what ends up going over there.
Right.
But I think that would be, I think that would be, the vision. But I mean, I hear so many different things. I hear, some people say a theme park, a baseball park, like, baseball field. So it's always funny to hear people's different ideas about what should go down there.
Yeah, for me, it's fascinating, the sort of that post-industrial environment, right? And what do you do with this giant industrial space that can't function anymore? There aren't businesses that are going to fill some of those what used to be warehouse spaces or whatever. I used to work with a company that was in one of those back areas called E.J. Stewart. They were an archaeology company. And, they moved out of town. They've actually gone to Alaska, strangely enough. And who's moving into that building? The revitalization offers some really interesting opportunities. So I hope that stuff really works out for you folks.
Thanks.
Can you tell me a little bit about how your work in Bridgeport sort of dovetails with the surrounding communities? So Upper Merion, I guess it's West Conshohocken, am I right about that? And Norristown.
West Conshohocken and Upper Merion, we all share Upper Merion School District. So I mean, we're constantly, we're always working with them, and we work very closely with them. Norristown, I feel like we support each other. I'm always in Norristown, and they always come support us across the bridge. They're always over there. But I would like to see more joint stuff. And I love everybody over there. You know what I mean? Like Derek and Sonia, Hakeem. Like I love everybody over there. But we don't. I agree. I don't feel like we do enough joint stuff, and I would like to see more of that. And I know they would too.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like we're connected by literally like the
Right,
bridge, right? Like it's a bridge, and that's the whole difference. And so bridging that, to make the pun, would be great. And getting folks from each of the towns into the other area instead of letting that bridge be a divider would be really great.
Right. All of us mayors are super cool too. The Monco mayors, I tell you, that's like shout out to the Monco mayors gang. Mayor gang. But yeah, shout out to all of them. We're all super tight, and they've been super supportive throughout.
What do mayors talk about when they get together?
The struggle.
Okay.
The struggle. I tell you, man, it's a rough life. Like people think you dedicate a lot. It's a lot of sacrifice, and you don't get a staff, so it's very much a one-man show sometimes, and it's tough. So it's nice to get together and know that you're not crazy. You know what I mean? Because people, it's a thankless job, but that's public service in general. You know what I mean? So that's what you sign up for. But it is gratifying. But it's nice to connect with people who know the game.
Understand. Yeah. So what are your responsibilities in Bridgeport as mayor? Like, what are the things that you're like directly managing? Not like suggesting to council, but like doing.
Technically, my responsibility is to oversee the police department.
Okay.
And that's the tough thing. Because I'm not a police officer. I certainly don't play one on TV. I don't claim to be. But I know that I have certain expectations, you know what I mean, as far as what sort of services and what the police department is offering the town. And so sometimes that's the debate, is whether or not I get too involved in what's going on in the police department. But I'm about accountability. You know what I mean? And I think the people are too. And I think that's what the debate that the entire world decided to weigh in on was about.
Right. So you've had the chief, I guess. Resign is the language,
chief,
right? And has that position been replaced?
Yes, the council did select a new chief.
How's that going?
He's in. He is doing a good job. He's out and about.
What are your hopes for policing in Bridgeport? Like, if that's the role, like, what are the things that you think are like the most critical issues for the police to be doing? Now, certainly, like, protect, right? Like,
yeah.
certainly protect it. But what other things in your head do you see as things that make a difference from the police force?
Effective community policing. You know what I mean? Establishing those relationships with the people, with the kids especially, you know what I mean? And presence, letting people know that they see you doing your job, and letting people feel confident and comfortable around our police. And I think they do, you know what I mean? I think it's clear that they do. Recently, you know, after council proposed the merging police department with Southern Marion and
Right.
dissolving our police department, the people came out, you know, in big crowds to support it. And that was very touching. People of all races, you know what I mean, who said, like, no, we love our police. Like, don't take away our police department. And that was, it was a great win to see that not go through.
You know, it's really interesting. I'm glad that it didn't go through. I can say that too. That Hank often talks about the importance of police, like it's a big thing for him. He spent so much time in law enforcement, and one of the things he always talks about, and sometimes he struggles with when he watches police today, is that they're not as engaged in the community as they could be.
I agree. And then again, it's it's more necessary in other communities than others. I feel like Bridgeport is so close, and when you have people in close quarters, community policing I feel like is more imperative, than it would be in like a more rural area. But I mean, it's always good. I don't believe you can have too much of it in any scenario.
Yeah, and so how big's the police force in Bridgeport?
12 officers.
Okay, all right. So you're working with a relatively small group, but it's still managing people, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah, and that's certainly not my job. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't want to give the impression that that's. I mean, technically it is. Technically, the mayor is in full force, in charge of the police force, and all of the. You are, but of course, I'm not making those decisions. You know what I mean? I'm just keeping a close eye on what's going on,
Okay.
and making sure that what's going on is fact-based and warranted.
Yeah, and that kind of accountability is important with any organization, right? And
So important.
We've seen
So
across the country
important.
places where that kind of accountability doesn't
Right.
take place, bad things happen.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly. So I take a lot of pride in making sure that it doesn't. A lot.
So this is going to be a weird, hard question, but I still have to ask it. So how do you think your orientation and your race affects your decision making when you're in these positions? Like, do you think? And I ask that not in a negative way, but in a way to sort of say, when you're taking the time to sort of approach a situation, do you find that those parts of your life are influential?
I don't know that I have yet. Maybe subconsciously, you know what I mean? Like maybe they are and I don't know it, but I can't think of any legislation that specifically that like I thought like me in my heart, like I'm not going to support this, or I am going to support this because of who I am. I
Right.
genuinely, I feel like everything, like I also recently proposed that council support a clean renewable energy ordinance, which I was also super proud of, and to see that they did. They did, in fact, support it, and
great.
it got through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, these are, I don't feel like it's anything specific to me. I know in my heart of hearts that it's, you know what I mean, what we should be doing. You know what I mean, in Bridgeport, and that's the sort of progress that, like, I'm really proud of. You know what I mean? Those are wins. You know, the anti-discrimination ordinance, the clean energy renewable ordinance, the after all of the stuff in the articles, like when the anti-discrimination ordinance, when I tell you each of those meetings were 2 hours long, they were long meetings. There was a lot of passionate people against it. And literally the day after the Philly Voice article hit, council proposed a hate speech resolution.
Really?
That passed 6-0
Yeah, see, there you go.
in 5 minutes.
Right.
And that's progress. You know what I mean? Like, we went from hours of discussion about anti-discrimination to pass 4-3, very narrowly, to 6-0 hate speech. Like, it became clear then. You know what I mean? Like, no, this is something that we can't pretend like it's not happening. You know what I mean? And I'm so proud of all of those things. And I want to keep that going. You know what I mean? I want to come. You know, there's certainly more things that I'm excited to fight for, that I'm prepared to be controversial. But I don't really care, because when you think about it, like, one, I know it's right. I do struggle with that. Like, sometimes I feel like, is what I'm doing right if the town doesn't want it? Like, even with the anti-discrimination ordinance, I was like, I know in my heart of hearts it's right, but should I if people really don't want it? Like, should you know what I mean? Am I fighting for the right things if people don't want it? But you know what? Everything I'm talking about, California did 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, we're going to get with it here.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that like you know that there were voices that didn't want it, but there's lots of people who do, right? There's a
Right.
giant silent majority in almost all these cases of people who are just of good heart, right?
Yeah,
Who want to do the
they're
right
there,
thing.
and I wish they were more vocal. Wherever you are, if you're in Bridgeport, I need you to be more vocal and let me know I'm not crazy. I do need that, because when I tell you, I get so much support from everywhere, all over the place. When I tell you, I'm not exaggerating, like all over the world, and it's so touching, and it really moves me. But it's tough when I don't feel like I have it as much at home. It doesn't make it any easier.
Well, I hope people come out and sort of let you know that they support you, because I know there's people out there, and as when we think about the sort of that challenge of balancing what we know is right versus the governance, right, and how the difference between governance and the sort of democratic move and how those things fit together, sometimes it's about having the vision for what a future can be. People, when they understand the issues. So you have these 2-hour meetings, they're as much instructive, right, as they are decision-making, and people's minds change. And I'm glad to hear about the hate speech ordinance. Can you tell me a little bit about this clean energy thing? Like, what's the commitment that Bridgeport's making in that ordinance?
And that's what I love about it, is it's you're not tying yourself down. It really is just saying that, like, we're going to hold ourselves to a standard where we're going to make a conscious effort to do our best, to pick clean energy sources. You know what I mean? And it's a pledge that several other municipalities in Pennsylvania have made. I would like to see more make, and I'm also very passionate about environmental issues. So shout out to Penn Environment and everybody who's, continued that. And,
right.
But I'm super proud of that, because that is, that's something that we all got to do. You know what I mean? And so there's not any specific promise being made, but I have a lot of ideas about, and council does too. They've been all on that train, you know what I mean? We see the same message in that regard, and we're definitely going to do our best to make it, to make it come to fruition for Bridgeport.
That's great, and that's pretty exciting. That idea of sort of moving people's hearts and minds through legislation is really great. I mean, it's interesting to sort of see people be able to discuss a topic, make a decision, choose a side, and work that out. It's great. What's the population of Bridgeport?
4,500.
Yeah, so you're in a community that's relatively small.
Little old Bridgeport.
Yeah, 4,500, right? So Norristown is our high school here is going to be 2,000 kids next year, right? That's that lets us know sort of a thing about governance, and yet still within that community, it's work to make sure people are growing and learning and developing
Right.
and feeling safe, right?
Exactly.
And that's great. I'm really glad to hear that. So if I asked you then, what's your to-do list for the next couple of months or the remainder of your term? What are some of the things that are on your to-do list?
Well, I don't want to give away too many.
And don't feel like you have to give away too much.
All right, because some of them are top secret.
Yeah, just give me the little T's will be there, and people will be looking for the top secret ones.
But one
then.
thing I am prepared to be super passionate about, medical marijuana.
Okay.
Medical marijuana. I recently got my card. Shout out to Cisco, the dubbed Queen of Cannabis by the Inquirer. She helped me out a lot with that, but it has changed my life.
Okay, and it's interesting, like that Dalen Leach certainly was intricately involved.
Love
in that,
him.
right?
I'm prepared to shout out to him and Governor Wolf, who have consistently, supported what is right. And what is right is that we have medical marijuana. Really, we could take it a step further, but I want to continue to spread that gospel, because it has helped me tremendously throughout all. When I tell you, I can't and to watch and to really know that. And even outside of the medical benefits, which are absolutely right, it's a criminal justice issue. You know what I mean? We have to look at this, and we have to make sure that this is implemented in a way where all the right people are benefiting from it, and involved and engaged. And I'm prepared. I'm excited to join Dalen Leach and Governor Wolf in that initiative as well.
That's exciting. Yeah, that's great. And those kind of, I mean, it feels so much like you're really committed to some really strong ideals, and you're finding ways to work with your community, even with the challenges that have happened to you. We're running out of time. I just want to say how much it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I certainly hope that people will take the time to meet Mark Barbee instead of and to not just grab onto the impression that they may have gotten from one piece of ordinance legislation that you had passed that may be misunderstood. I hope that they can take the time to really find out the kind of person you are and hopefully engage with you. It's a real privilege to get to talk to you, and I hope that you can settle down and work through some of those issues, and I hope some of these top secret things come to the forefront. We can hear about them in the future.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me. It means a lot to get a spot and get to speak and let people know I'm not a monster.
Yeah, and you certainly are not a monster. And let me say that Hank was really excited about the fact you were going to be on the show. He made a point this week when he sort of checked in with me to say how much he wanted to make sure you were treated well and handled well.
Shout out to Hank.
He's been such a supporter of you through this whole process.
Yes, he has. I love him for that, man.
So many people see Hank through the same kind of weird lens where they look at something from his past or something that he says because of the way his worldview works. And they don't realize that, like, in person, he's a very, very different
got the heart of gold.
Yeah, and he makes choices that are beyond sort of ideology that sometimes he may do. Because I can tell you sometimes he'll say something that makes my head spin on the air. And then I'm like, but you're on the air with this person who believes something very different than you, and you're still supporting him. So
yeah,
Hank's been there, I know.
He's been there for me.
And he's really glad that you have moved past the harassment, which he finds heinous. And so I say to you from him, he hopes the best for you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Thanks.
So thanks for your time.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
All right, it's great to talk to you. This has been John Doyle. I'm here with Mark Barbee, the mayor of Bridgeport. What a tremendously interesting conversation. Again, we'll be back real soon with more guests. Hank hopefully will be back in the next month or so. But you have to put up with Stan Husky and I for the time being. Again, we're going to keep bobbing and weaving just as Hank keeps bobbing and weaving. That's as entertaining as I can get for you folks. If you really want Hank, tune into one of the other parts of his show you can watch on his channel on YouTube. We also have a previous episode with Mark Barbee. You should check that out as well as this one. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.